Welcome to the Deep Dive. We're going to be tackling something pretty fascinating today. You know, you submitted something about the ancient Egyptian gods and their family tree. And it's not the entire Egyptian pantheon.
Oh, no.
Right? It's just a selection.
Yeah.
But a pretty significant one. And it gives us a really interesting way to look at the male and female deities.
Yes.
In this particular selection that you gave us. So
yeah.
What we're going to do in this deep dive is to really explore that dynamic between the gods and goddesses based on your pasted text.
Exactly. We're looking at the role.
Data on the screen, numbers come alive. Male, female flows where the patterns thrive. Visual charts, public colors unify. Gender decoded, bringing truth to light. Small drum fill. We break it down, real talk. Trends unveiling, facts from every block. Here's your insight, watch the data glide. Gender decoded, let the beats collide.
We're looking at the roles of the male and female deities in this selection and really trying to uncover what that tells us about their relationships with one another and what kind of cultural significance that might hold.
Right. What did it mean to the ancient Egyptians based on what you've given us?
Right.
How many gods and goddesses are we actually dealing with here?
So according to our analysis of the material you provided, we've got 25 male deities or gods.
Okay.
And some of the examples that really stand out in your text are some of the really well-known figures like Nun, the primordial watery abyss.
Like the very beginning.
The very beginning. All of creation comes from Nun.
Right.
We've got Ra, the sun god.
Big one.
A big one.
Yeah.
Osiris, the ruler of the afterlife.
Yeah.
And then, of course, Horus,
right,
the falcon-headed god associated with kingship.
Okay, so those are the fellas. What about the goddesses? How many are we looking at in your text?
So in your selection, there are 18 female deities or goddesses.
Okay.
And some of these are some pretty powerful figures. We've got Banat, she's a great mother goddess. Hathor, the goddess of love, joy, music.
Right.
Isis, the quintessential mother, magician, and protector.
Yeah.
And then Mot, the embodiment of cosmic order, law and justice. Really foundational concept.
So if we add those all up, 25 and 18, how many deities are we dealing with in this family tree that you've shared with us?
It comes to a total of 43.
43 deities, okay.
In this particular family tree that we've got in your material.
Right.
Right.
And what's the ratio? Like for every...
Oh, for this selection, it works out to about 1.4 male deities for every one female deity.
Okay, so slightly more
males.
Gods than goddesses.
Yes, in this particular group.
In this particular group.
But it's very important for you to remember that this ratio is based on this specific selection.
Right. We're not talking about the entire pantheon.
The complete Egyptian pantheon was way bigger.
Yeah.
Or the first.
Okay, so now we've kind of gotten the head count.
Yes.
Now let's talk about what these gods and goddesses actually did. What were their roles?
Yeah, what did they do?
And how did those roles differ between the gods and goddesses in your text?
Right. Well, what's really fascinating here, and probably had a big impact on ancient Egyptian thought, is the fact that male gods are really closely associated with creation.
Okay.
And you can see this with figures like Ra, Atum, Amun, Ta. All of these guys had a crucial part in how the universe came to be and how it keeps going, especially with that daily cycle of the sun.
Of course.
The Egyptians were really focused on the sun, right?
Yeah.
So this emphasis on the male creative power, it probably played a role in how they viewed men in their own society.
Right. So the idea of male agency and taking initiative.
Exactly. Like, those ideas could have been strengthened by seeing this reflected in their gods.
That makes sense. And then, of course, Ra, the sun god, I mean, that's a huge...
Oh, yeah. A major connection there.
Solar connection running right through there.
Absolutely. And it goes beyond just creation itself.
Okay.
because we see male gods also really linked to the concept of kingship.
Right, like pharaohs and all that.
Yeah, exactly. Osiris, he's the ruler of the underworld, right? He's the resurrected king.
Mm-hmm.
And Horus, he's the divine pharaoh. He's the protector of Egypt.
Yeah.
So they really underscore this deep connection between male divinity and earthly power.
The divine right to rule, basically.
Exactly. It's like their authority came directly from the gods.
Okay, what about other responsibilities? I mean, did they have, like, specific things they took care of in a cosmos?
Right.
Like, did one have to, like, make sure the Nile flooded every year or something?
Right. So a lot of the male gods in your text, they govern very specific domains.
Okay.
Like, Shuasu, he was the god of air, right?
Yeah.
And the space between the earth and sky.
Mm-hmm.
Then you've got Geb, he's the god of the earth itself.
Okay.
Thoth, he was the god of wisdom, knowledge, writing, magic.
Right.
And Anubis, he was all about embalming, funerary rites, the journey into the afterlife.
So each of them had their own specialty.
Exactly. Like their own area expertise within this divine order,
That makes sense. What about those really old gods, though? Like the ones from the very beginning. You mentioned Nun earlier, right?
Yeah. Those primordial figures, they're super important.
Right. The ones that were there before everything else.
Exactly. So you've got Nun. He represents that chaotic primordial water that everything came from.
Mm-hmm.
And then you've got Apep. He's the serpent of chaos. He embodies those forces that are always trying to mess up creation.
So they're like the ultimate opposing forces.
Totally. They represent that tension between order and chaos that was so central to the Egyptian worldview.
And then there's Set, right? He's a bit of a troublemaker.
Yeah, Set's interesting. He's often seen as the god of disorder, storms, foreign lands.
Right.
Yeah.
Like the opposite of stability.
Exactly. He represents that necessary counterpart to the established order.
So it's not all about peace and harmony. There's that element of conflict and disruption, too.
Absolutely. It's like they understood that you need both to have a complete picture.
Okay, so those are the male gods and their roles. What about the goddesses? What are we seeing on the female side of things in your text?
Well, if we connect this to what we know about Egyptian beliefs from your material, you see goddesses often connected with motherhood and nurturing.
Okay.
Figures like Mut, Hathor, and Isis, they immediately spring to mind.
Mm-hmm.
And Isis, especially as the mother of Horus, she's this really powerful protector,
Right.
She's this enduring symbol of maternal devotion and magical power.
And was that, like, a common thing? Like, were goddesses worshipped a lot in ancient Egypt?
Oh, yeah, they were hugely popular. Like, think about it, right? If the goddesses represent these qualities of nurturing and protection, wouldn't that resonate with people?
Yeah, I guess so.
Right.
Like, everyone wants to feel safe and cared for.
Exactly. So it makes you wonder, right?
About what?
Well, you've got this patriarchal structure in Egyptian society.
Yeah, with the pharaohs and everything.
Right. But then you have this widespread worship of goddesses.
Mm-hmm.
So did that offer women a different kind of power?
Like, maybe not political power, but spiritual power.
Maybe, yeah. It's a question worth considering as you explore your text further.
Okay, so motherhood, nurturing, protection. That
Mhm.
seems to be a theme with the goddesses in your material.
Definitely. But it's not just about being gentle and motherly,
Oh, okay. So there's more to it.
Way more. We also see goddesses in these roles of fierce protection.
Okay.
Like Isis, again, she fits that. But think about Sekhmet.
Yeah, she's one of the lion head, right?
Exactly. Fierce lion-headed goddess. She's connected with war, healing, and the power of the sun.
So she's not afraid to fight for what's right.
Not at all. And then you've got Bastet, often depicted as a cat.
Oh, I love cats.
Me too. She was all about protecting the home, fertility, and childbirth.
So they've got some real power behind them.
Oh, absolutely. Their roles were definitely not limited to just those softer maternal aspects.
Right, a real range of responsibility. And some of them embody more, like, abstract concepts, right? You mentioned Matt earlier.
Yes. Matt is a great example. She doesn't represent just justice, but that fundamental cosmic order.
Right, that balance you were talking about.
Exactly. Like,
Yeah.
she's the principle that keeps the universe from falling apart.
She's pretty important.
Hugely important. And then you have goddesses tied to natural forces like Nut.
Oh, yeah, she's the sky, right?
Yes, the sky goddess. And then Tefnut, she's the goddess of moisture, rain, and dew.
So they're like personifications of these essential elements.
Exactly. And then Neith, she's got connections to creation, weaving, and warfare.
Wow, she does it all. Okay, it's interesting how a lot of these deities seem to come in pairs in your text.
Oh, yeah. That's a really important observation. The pairing of male and female deities is super significant.
You mentioned a few before, like Shu and Tefnut.
Yeah, you've got Shu and Tefnut, air and moisture.
Right.
Geb and Nut, earth and sky.
Mm-hmm.
Osiris and Isis, kingship and magic.
Okay.
And even Set and Nephthys, disorder and mourning.
So it's not just random. There's a reason they're paired together.
Absolutely not random. It was deeply symbolic for the ancient Egyptians.
Of what?
Of balance. That fundamental balance they saw in the cosmos itself.
So it's not just about having both genders represented. It's about how they complement each other.
Exactly. Neither could exist or function without the other.
And how does this tie back to Mud, that cosmic harmony?
It's all connected. Both male and female deities, they each played a vital role in upholding Ma'at.
So both genders are essential for maintaining that balance.
Absolutely. It was a partnership, a collaboration for cosmic stability.
Okay, so we've got the pairings, we've got the balance. What about the symbolism of their genders? Are there any general trends we can observe in your text?
In general, male gods are often associated with more active, creative forces.
Okay.
Think about Ra, his daily journey across the sky.
Right, bringing light and life.
Exactly, a powerful symbol of that active principle. Female goddesses, on the other hand, often represent those more nurturing, receptive aspects, like Nut. She's the sky, right? She passively receives the sun each day and gives birth to it anew each morning.
So active versus receptive.
Yeah, you could say that, but it's not always so black and white.
Oh. There are exceptions.
Totally. You can't oversimplify these complex figures. Sekhmet, for example, she's a war goddess, a healer.
Right, she doesn't exactly fit the nurturing stereotype.
Not at all. And Ma'at, she embodies justice, law, cosmic order.
Yeah, those aren't really gendered concepts.
Exactly. So these exceptions in your text are really important. They show us that we can't make assumptions based on gender alone.
So how does this divine gender dynamic relate to human society in ancient Egypt?
That's a crucial question.
Right.
We know Egyptian society was patriarchal, right?
Yeah, with the pharaohs and all that.
Exactly. So it's tempting to see that reflected in the pantheon.
Like the male gods having more authority because male humans had more authority.
Right. And in your text, there is that slight numerical dominance of male deities, especially in those roles like creation and kingship.
So it kind of makes sense, doesn't it? The earthly power structure mirroring the heavenly one.
But then, if you look at daily religious life, it gets more complicated.
How so?
Goddesses like Isis and Hathor were hugely popular.
Mm-hmm.
People from all walks of life worshipped them.
Okay.
And in many cases, their worship might have been even bigger than that of some male gods.
So even though society was patriarchal, goddesses still held a lot of power.
Exactly. It shows you the complexity of their belief system.
Yeah, it's not as simple as saying men were in charge, so male gods were more important.
Right. It makes you think about where the real influence lies.
Yeah, that's interesting. What about those unique cases you mentioned earlier?
Oh, yeah, those are fascinating.
Like Imhotep.
Yes. He was a real person, an architect and physician who was later deified.
So he kind of broke the mold of the traditional pantheon.
Totally. And then there's Eton, the sun disk.
Right. The focus of Akhenaten's religious reforms.
Exactly. That was a major shift away from traditional polytheism.
And arguably, Aten's worship kind of transcended traditional gender roles.
It's possible, yeah. It was a unique period in Egyptian religious history.
Okay, before we wrap things up, we should acknowledge what our analysis doesn't cover.
Yes, that's important. Remember, we're looking at a specific selection of deities from your text.
Like, not the entire Egyptian pantheon.
Exactly. There were so many other gods and goddesses, some more prominent than others, some regional, some with very specific functions.
So if we looked at a broader range of deities, things might look different.
It's possible, yeah. The gender balance and the specific roles might shift if we considered the full complexity of the Egyptian pantheon across different periods and locations.
So what we've explored is a really fascinating snapshot, but it's just one part of a much larger and constantly evolving religious tradition.
And even within this snapshot, we see these important themes of gender, balance, and interconnectedness.
Right, suggesting fundamental aspects of their worldview.
Exactly. It gives you a lot to think about.
Okay, so to sum up, what's the key takeaway from our deep dive into this particular Egyptian god family tree?
I'd say the main thing is that while male deities do have a slight numerical advantage in your text, the roles of the goddesses are absolutely essential.
Okay.
They're diverse, they're significant, and they cover everything from those fundamental forces of nature to powerful protection to those crucial abstract concepts like justice and cosmic order.
Right, and the pairings emphasize that balance.
Exactly. Those recurring pairings of male and female deities with their complementary roles, they really highlight that Egyptian emphasis on balance, on Ma'at.
So even within what was likely a patriarchal society, the divine realm, as depicted in your text, shows us this crucial interplay
Yes.
and interdependence between the genders.
And that's really something, isn't it? It makes you wonder how that might have shaped their views on gender roles in their own society.
And it raises even bigger questions for us today.
Oh, absolutely.
Like, how do our own belief systems shape how we view different aspects of life?
That makes you think, right?
It really does. Thanks for sharing this fascinating material with us and for diving deep with us today.
It was my pleasure.
It was great.